Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm here with the second part of the Christmas fruitcake recipe. In the first part, I had shown you how to soak the dry fruits. And I know that at least some of you have soaked your dry fruits and waiting for the second part. So if you haven't soaked your dried fruits yet, don't worry. You can still bake a plum cake in time for Christmas by just soaking your dry fruits in orange juice overnight. The exact measure of the ingredients is in the description box, but I'll just quickly show you the ingredients. There's flour and dry fruit soaked in rum or juice, eggs, butter, sugar, caster sugar for making the caramel, some spices and sugar to grind the spices with, jam, vanilla essence, baking soda and baking powder. Let's start off with making some caramel. So you need to be extremely careful with the caramel because this is a slightly delicate process. It is very easy to burn the caramel, so you need to keep a close watch over it. For making caramel, I suggest that you use a heavy bottomed saucepan like this and not a non-stick one, because a non-stick one will not help you gauge the color of the caramel as it cooks. Here I've taken half a cup of caster sugar and I've added 1 tablespoon of water to it. And just using a spoon to just give a quick mix so that it's all mixed up together. After this point, I will not be using a spoon to mix this mixture again. I will only be swirling the saucepan like this to ensure even browning of the sugar. After a few minutes, you'll see that the sugar has crystallized and you'll also see a bit of browning around the edges. That's fine. So you can leave it on the stove on a low flame for some more time and you'll see that the sugar slowly starts melting. And when you see the browning around the edges, make sure you swirl the saucepan so that the sugar is evenly heated. Keep swirling the saucepan as you see the edges browning, and you'll see that slowly the other parts of the sugar also starts to brown slightly. Now you can see that the earlier crystallized parts have now slowly started to melt. Now you can clearly see the difference in how the caramel has started to turn a lovely golden brown color. And this is a point from which you have to be extremely careful because it takes this caramel very few minutes to go from a nice golden color to burnt. So keep swirling more often than you were doing so far. And you can use a pastry brush that has been dipped in water to just wipe down the sides of the pan where some of the sugar has crystallized. This will help prevent the syrup from crystallizing again, because if there are stray sugar crystals on the sides of the pans, it can crystallize the rest of the syrup. Now the caramel has turned a lovely golden color, but I want it to go slightly darker because it's the color of the caramel that gives the plum cake its nice color. So I'm just going to let it cook for a few more seconds, and you can see how quickly it's turned a darker shade. So I'm just taking it quickly off the stove and adding a 1/4 cup of warm water and giving it a quick swirl. Very careful when you are pouring the water in, as it can splash, and the caramel is extremely hot at this stage. Put it back on the flame and let it boil for a minute or two and then turn the flame off. Set the caramel aside to cool. Next step is to drain the dry fruits. So I am just draining the dry fruits onto a sieve here. And do not throw away the liquid because we'll be using a bit of the liquid in the cake. And if you're baking the cake a few days before you plan to use it, you can also use the leftover liquid to brush over the cake every day so as to enhance the flavor. You can see how the dry fruits have soaked up a lot of the rum and they've become really juicy and plump. Once most of the liquid has drained off from the dry fruits, you can move the dry fruits onto a different bowl. Take a few tablespoons of flour from the flour that we have measured out for the cake and sprinkle it over the dry fruits. Now give this a gentle mix so that the flour coats the dry fruits nicely. It just needs to be a thin coating. So this step is done so as to make sure that the dry fruits don't sink to the bottom of the cake and you get a bite of dry fruits in every bite of the cake. And from the drained liquid, I am taking about 1/4 cup and setting it aside. And now we're breaking the eggs and separating the yolks and the whites. We'll be whipping the whites and the yolks separately. Now let's beat the egg whites till soft peaks are formed. For those of you who don't know what soft peaks are, when you beat egg whites, you'll see that they slowly turn from the liquid form into a slightly foamy texture. And when you keep beating the egg whites further, it starts to thicken up a bit more. If you watch this closely, you'll see that this is starting to foam up, but this is not soft peaks yet. If you continue watching, you will see how it starts to thicken up. So this is the stage where we call it soft peaks. If you lift the beater attachment, you'll see that soft peaks are formed, but then it easily falls back in. Once that's done, we can beat the egg yolks till creamy. And now let's add in some of the butter. My little helper is here to help me. Yeah. So the butter is at room temperature, so it very easily blends in with the egg yolks. So whip nicely till it's creamy. It's time to add in the powdered sugar. As it is powdered sugar, it's better to add it in stages. If you add it all in one go and try to beat it, it usually flies all over the place and it becomes a big mess and you lose a lot of sugar as well. This is the reason why we do this in stages. Make sure you beat very well after each stage of adding the sugar. The next step is to make the spice powder. We're taking cloves, cardamom, nutmeg and cinnamon along with a bit of sugar and powdering it. This is the spice powder that we'll be adding into the cake. Now we are adding in the vanilla essence. Adding in the spice powder now. I always grind the spices with a generous amount of sugar from what has been measured out for the cake because it makes it much easier to get a very fine spice powder. It's time to add in the cool down caramel syrup now. Let's beat all this together now. It's time to add in the flour now. Again, we'll be adding the flour in parts like we did with the powdered sugar so that we don't have too much of the flour flying all over the place. Here I'll be adding the baking powder and baking soda later on, but if you wish to, you can sieve those two in along with the flour and you can add it in together at the same time. Adding in the remaining flour and mixing it in again. I'm adding in the baking powder and soda here now. It's time to add in the jam now. Now let's fold in the egg whites. Fold in half of it first and mix it well and make sure that it's completely mixed in with the cake batter. Add the remaining egg whites and fold it into the batter again. Add in the dry fruits and fold it into the cake batter. Add in the drained liquid that we had kept aside and fold it into the batter. Grease and line 2 cake tins. I've used an 8-inch round pan and an 8-inch square pan here, and I'm dividing the batter between the two of them. Preheat the oven to 180 degrees Celsius.
Bake for about 30 minutes and take out the cakes and check using a skewer to see if it's completely cooked. You can see that there is slight wetness on the skewer, so it means the cake needs to go in for a couple of minutes more. Because the tops of the cakes had browned, I have put an aluminium foil on the top of both the cakes so that the top doesn't get browned any further. I baked for another 10 minutes and this time the cakes have been cooked through completely. As you can see, there is no wetness on the skewers.
Now you can let the cakes cool in the cake tin for about 5 to 10 minutes, and then you can transfer them onto a cooling rack and allow it to cool completely. So that's our first Christmas cake for the season. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you haven't subscribed already. And if you have already soaked your dry fruits to bake this cake and you're baking along with me, don't forget to leave a comment here and I'll be waiting to see pictures of your cake. Thank you for watching. See you soon with another fun video.